Today, I'm welcoming someone whose work beautifully bridges self-leadership, spirituality, and the deep inner path of self-discovery. Seth Kopald is a certified Level 3 IFS practitioner and presenter with years of experience supporting IFS trainings at every level and assisting Richard Schwartz, the founder of IFS, on multiple retreats. He brings a uniquely grounded, intuitive presence into this work, one that helps people meet their parts with compassion and step more fully into their self. Seth is the author of a beautiful book called Self-Led that explores what it truly means to live from inner leadership, not as a concept, but as an embodied spiritual practice. His work spans self-led parenting, communication coaching, leadership, and the deeper, more mystical dimensions of IFS. What I appreciate most about Seth is the way he guides people back to their own inner wisdom. His presence is spacious, attuned, and deeply respectful, creating a field where parts will feel enough self-energy to soften, and where everyone feels welcomed and everyone feels seen. And I hope you will take from this episode maybe the most important thing that we need to know about what it means to be in self and what self actually is. Enjoy this conversation. Hi, Seth, and thank you so much for coming to Your Soul's Therapist today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
You have such a beautiful body of work that I've heard of, and I enjoyed myself on the topic of self, which is like the central piece of internal family systems therapy model. And we can talk about it from so many different perspectives. But today, I just want to really learn from you and hear from you from the years of your experience of guiding people and exploring the topic of self-energy and self-leadership, what it all means, because, you know, we can have our own understanding of it, but it would be great to hear from someone like you who has spent a lot of time in the topic. So my first question to you would be probably, let's try to define what is self.
What is self?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's somewhat of an elusive topic, right? What is self? What I'm thinking nowadays, the way I'm looking at it, is that, when we are in full self energy, like on a continuum of being purely in self, I think we would be kind of in a meditative space when we're feeling connected with all things and the larger self, some people would say, where it's more of a state where we might not be able to talk to each other. So I'm not really even embodied so much. I'm kind of just in a collective space, like full self energy, right? And then there's times that parts blend with us where we pretty much become the part, right? So the part takes over my eyes, it takes over my ears, it takes over my mouth, it takes over my heart, even how my heart feels towards somebody. And I think being in self means instead of being blended by a part, I'm embodying this self energy where I'm almost like a type of blending, but different. Like I'm blending the self energy into my human form. So I'm able to use my mouth, use my ears, use my eyes with a concentration of self energy. So I can interact with you from a self energy place, not from a part's place. And if I was leading from a part, I typically would be more concerned about my needs and my well-being than I might be really connecting with you. Whereas if I fully embody self-energy, it's more of a we space that feels important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so So from that place of embodying self energy, if that's self, then I can actually even turn towards my parts. But I think when we start talking, our parts are also engaged. Like, why am I unique when I'm in self with my parts compared to someone else? A lot of it is I've learned so many, my parts know so many things about what does it mean to be with children, what's developmentally appropriate for children, like what does it mean to be attuned. So when I'm with my parts or helping somebody with their parts, I'm also informed by my parts, who mostly, and it's ideal if they're in an unburdened place. Like, we talk about an unburdened system and a burdened system. So when our parts unburdened, they really help dance with self. Like we're kind of a team working together. So when I'm helping you be with a part in I like to call it exquisite attunement, and in this beautiful way, I really do think there's parts helping us because they also have self energy of their own, which they lend to the experience. So I think self really is like embodying self energy. Um,
Then how would you define self energy for people that never heard about this concept before and they have just an
mhm,
idea? I know that in IFS we have this 8 C's qualities of self,
mhm,
but in your own words, if we would kind of put aside the 8 C's for a moment,
mhm,
what would be the texture, the quality, the sense, the felt
mhm.
experience of that self energy?
Yeah, I love that you use the word texture because that's the word I've been using a lot. Like even to notice if I'm in a part or if I'm in self or I'm connected to something larger than me, like there's a different texture. Um, so for me, I guess if I was going to boil it down to one word, it would be love. That and because like Thich Nhat Hanh, Vietnamese Buddhist who passed away not too long ago, he said that like to understand someone is to love them. Like when we love somebody, we really want to know them, which is very different than knowledge. Like if I know you, I have biases. Like, oh, you're this person, that person, and it informs how I. But if I really just want to be understanding, then those C's come in, like, right? Because I want to have curiosity and I want to have compassion. So I do think it's a loving force, and I do feel like I believe there's a divine force. And I think it's part of that same energy. Some people who are religious might say like there's a piece of God in everyone. I think that's the self energy as well. Um, I think it's also mixes in with like life force, like chi energy. So I think it's all very similar, and it's abundant, and it means like no one could lose their self energy, or no one has to work hard to gain it. The working hard might, excuse me, the working hard might feel working hard to access it
Yeah,
because
that's
sometimes
a lot of work.
we have so many parts that sometimes block it that, and ironically, when we're doing it in a way that's self-led or we have somebody guiding us who's self-led, it won't feel as hard. It won't feel like efforting as much. Um, but
So
that's
it's
kind of what I
love.
think is love.
It's
Yeah.
love. Thank you for that. Thank you for framing it in such a beautiful way. And it's the the divine, God, these things have a lot of burdens on top of that, different
Mhm.
religions, belief systems, things like that. But love, it just doesn't have that.
Yeah,
It doesn't have any burdens on top of it.
right. And that's what I think the divine is. So I think the anything that's when people talk about the divine and they're not referencing love, then I think it's a human intervention that has disrupted what the divine is. Because I think people who actually touch the divine or sense it, it's always love. Like
Oh,
everything above us, like in that space. And there's various levels of guides and angels and all these things that people know about. It's all levels of love.
yeah, exactly. It's all levels of love. And what you're saying, that this love, we don't need to We don't need to work very hard to gain it or to find it. It's always there. The question is how we peel off everything that's protecting
Mm-hmm.
us from experiencing or being in that state of love.
Right.
And this is great because we don't need to define self or self energy as something religious or even spiritual at the end of the day, because love, it
Mm.
encompasses it all so perfectly together.
That makes sense. Yeah. And one thing I like, an analogy I've been playing with, is that when we feel very burdened and it's hard to access love or self-energy, it's almost like we're in a cave, and then the mouth of the cave is like, like in movies when there's an avalanche and rocks cover the mouth and you can't get out. And I feel like each rock is like a burden or a belief um, that doesn't fit, that isn't really real, but it blocks the light from coming in. It blocks us from going into the light. So the work that we do with IFS, even or other types of modalities, that helps clear us of our beliefs that are negative beliefs that are old, given to us by others. There's a word I'm missing. There's an adjective that I usually use for these kind of beliefs, um, but as we do this work, we move a rock at a time, and we always see this moment with a client when just a little beam of light comes through, and it's like a little cool air that reaches them, right? Like a breath of fresh air, and it gives them hope. And then they remove more rocks, and they start seeing like this is possible. So for me, that's what I'm really noticing. Like our work here is to remove anything that blocks the light or anything that blocks it, love, the energy of love.
Right.
Um, and sometimes it's our protectors, like it's not safe, because when we're in love, we typically will be singing and dancing and joyful, and we might have been told by our parents or by our teachers that, calm down, stop, that's not allowed. So sometimes our protectors will just kind of even move our essence away to keep us safe. So sometimes we find parts that aren't even burdened, but they've been just locked away. So I don't know if you've ever had that with a client where they find a part and it's like they're just shining like bright light and they're beautiful. They don't seem hurt. And I'm always like, can you ask if this is like your essence, or do you sense this is your essence? Like it could be your creativity or your joy, your exuberance.
That's right. But when I'm thinking about self-led person or a person that embodies that self energy, meaning that person in kind of permanent state of love, and awe and openness and curiosity and compassion and all
Mm.
those things and calm. Do you have as an example of someone that you look up to, that was here on earth with us or still here on earth with us, someone who is in a
Mm.
permanent state of self leadership or
Mhm.
embodies that self energy? I just want to pause here for a second and let you know that I'm deeply thrilled to share that I am now transitioning into offering private, one-on-one healing retreats, or maybe you can tell intensives, both for individuals and for couples in our sanctuaries in Hong Kong and in Ubud, Bali. After more than a decade of hosting group retreats, I've come to realize that the most powerful transformation happens when the entire experience, the program, the schedule, the ceremonies, the practices, the therapy sessions are devoted and designed to one person's particular journey. Even every moment is shaped around your story, your needs, and your pace. In a private retreat, we have the time to go way deeper, to tend to what has long been waiting to be healed. to release what's been waiting on you for decades, and to reconnect with your clarity and your soul. These retreats are for those who feel they're standing at a crossroads, sensing that something is ready to change or that it is time to heal on much deeper layer. Throughout our days together, I weave internal family systems therapy, shamanic energy healing, breath work, meditation, ceremonies together into a personalized, intuitive process that meets you exactly where you are. It is a sacred journey created just for you. So if you've been feeling that it's time to step away, to reset, and to come home finally to yourself, I invite you to reach out. You'll find my contact details in the description below and on my website. I would be honored to host you and to walk beside you on this deeply personal and transformative path.
I have to really think on that if I think it's actually possible for someone to be fully embodied that way. Because we're human, this is like a place where we wrestle with things and we get blended, and it's like in that wrestling we kind of find ourselves in it, like our imperfections make us human. So I don't know if I've ever met anyone, but if there was anyone, the first person that's coming to mind right now is like Thich Nhat Hanh. Like everything I've ever seen or read of him has been so beautiful and so loving. But I've never seen him wake up in the morning and not have his tea. Like, is he grumpy? Like, you know, like you only see the little snippets of his best in his
Yeah.
reading when he writes. So I don't know if I've ever I don't know, like what I'm hearing right now, like sometimes we get like I feel like I'm getting a concentration of self energy talking to you because it feels good and safe, and what I'm hearing is that it's not even the goal to be like permanently there. Because then there's like perfection. Like because really our parts need us to be perfect. And typically when there's perfectionism, there's often underneath that is shame. Like I have to be perfect so that I won't feel that I'm bad or that I'm worthless. And somebody who maybe has cleared out that shame realizes sometimes I'm just grumpy when I don't have my coffee. Or sometimes I just say things that I didn't mean. And so for me, a self-led person is somebody who returns quickly, who realizes when they weren't self-led and does a repair without being asked. Who contemplates their actions. Um, like for me, one thing I teach with parenting a lot is noticing how people react to me. So if I think I'm in self and people like turn away or make a face, the first thing we want to do is point at them, like, what's the matter with this person? But I find anytime there's a reaction, if I'm open enough to love and understanding, I might realize I think I was blended in that moment when I said that thing. Even if I said it because, like, okay, I have a lot of things I could say that my parts might use, right? Because I know all the appropriate things to say to my kids or to somebody, but the energy, or like you said, the texture might be a little off. So when a part uses developmentally appropriate language and kind nonviolent communication, it still causes some kind of disruption. So when I
Yeah,
see
even
somebody,
if you use the right words, you still can feel the energy
right.
behind it.
So if somebody reacts to me, it might be good for me to at least notice like what just happened. And even if it doesn't need a repair, but it needs me to shift back, like, wow, I just saw you kind of pull back, or okay, maybe I need to check who's here, who's talking. So to me, that's what a self-led person does. They're not going to be perfect.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that because, on this journey, we might be blended with parts that want to be like Buddha or reach that state of perfection, enlightenment. And I haven't met this people yet
Yeah.
in my life. And also on my journey, sometimes I have people that have this tendency to idealize me, like, oh, she's a
Mm.
teacher, she's a healer, she should be perfect. But oh my God, if they could see me when I'm driving car and there is a car in front of me, though, like there's no self energy in that moment whatsoever. So
Right.
I I love that you bring it down to earth and make it actually real. That it's not the goal to reach whichever perfection. But I have a personal question for you.
Hmm.
That's
Okay.
definitely my part asking.
Yeah, sure.
So the question is, at some point of my life, I came to a place where I was absolutely swimming in the divine love. I wouldn't say it was love and light period of time. I wouldn't say it was bypassing, but I just something happened, and um, and this energy just flooded, you know.
Mm.
And I remember I created a course that called Seven Expressions of Love. And it's just all to agape love. And I was completely in that state. Now, what happened was that the reality, the life, and other people's parts, right? They impacted me a lot while I was in such an open love space. So how would you suggest to integrate us, when we access this energy, we come into the world with an open heart, like just light beings of love and divine,
Mhm.
and we get traumatized.
Yeah. And how do we step into the world and hold some of that? Is that what I'm hearing?
How to be safe in the
Okay.
world while being so much in that love energy.
Yeah. And am I hearing too that when you were so open that it felt like you were more porous to people's parts? Like you had less boundaries? Is that what I'm hearing? Or no?
I guess so. I guess, yeah. More like much more open to everything. So
And then
it's
when
like
things
it's
came in
difficult to
there.
be open to love and close to
Mm,
um, you know, some kind of bad things happening, right?
yeah,
So
sure.
if you're open, you kind of just open to it all at the same
Okay.
time.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'm relating this to recently I did a retreat and it's like 5 days of like pure love fest, right? So I was teaching on parenting, but we only had 10 people and we're just like this, we became a community. I feel like I call it the machine dropped away of life. Like everything else just left and we were just in this beautiful space. And then you come back and it's kind of like coming from outer space. If you go in too quickly, you might burn up, because you're entering the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Um, and I think one thing that I have learned with parenting is like, what kind of preparation do I do before I engage? Like, how do we sit with our parts and say, we're about to go to a place that doesn't know this? So I might need some of my protectors to start looking around again. But I also know that self energy has a lot of power, like you ever watch Star Trek with the ship and they put the shield around the ship, like an energy shield? Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is they have like these spaceships. And they can say shields up. They push a button and it creates an energy shield around the spaceship. So if somebody tries to attack them, it bounces off the shield. So, and sometimes I feel like our self energy also has that power to create like a boundary. Like I liked the way I like to call it up is like I'm creating this energy circle around me that's permeable to love, but not permeable to things that want to hurt me. So those things can bounce off. So that's some energetic things I might do. But I also might realize that I think like when we ask our protectors to trust us, they're like, well, how are you going to be safe? Like if you're just love, you're going to get hurt. Because that's probably what happened to us when we were young, when we were just love, like you're born pure love, and then you get hurt and then you close down. Um, so we have to convince our parts that self can protect. But then if we go out into the world and we're not conscious with discernment, like who's safe? What are they doing over there? Is that safe for my body? Is that safe for my family? Then our parts are like, you're not safe. We have to take over again. And then we feel spacious anymore. The love starts constricting. Our heart gets hard. A shell has to cover it again. So I think self has a lot of keen perception. And I also, one way to look at it is I don't think self uses all of the C's and all of the P's, which is like perception or playfulness, perspective, persistence. But we can consciously like turn up the knobs of any one of those C's or P's, right? So if I'm about to have a hard conversation with somebody, maybe I need to turn up my courage more and I need to turn up my confidence more and my clarity. Where if I come in with just pure compassion, I might not be able to say the thing because I'm so like open to your experience that I might not be able to even, you know. So I think as we enter the world, we can kind of which qualities of self do we need to create boundaries? Um, and I think I love preparing myself. So if you know you're going to be stepping into a hard situation, because we call these external constraints in IFS, like these external things make it so it's harder to be in self. But if we say to our parts, like my mom has passed, but she was my biggest tormentor. So if we were going to her house, if I just got out of the car, went inside, I was totally unprepared. I didn't have any energetic shields up. My parts were just like whatever. And all of a sudden, darts are coming in and my system's getting hurt. But if I say, okay, I would like you all to be behind me, I'm going to lead, shields up.
I love
And
that.
even, and it was even one time in my life, I told my parts, like, what if we let my mom say anything she wants for 30 minutes? Which is inconsequential to us. Like it just bounces off and goes to nowhere. Because usually she would hold on to things in the first 30 minutes, she'd and we just let it get out of her system.
I
And
think it's a
then,
good advice for many people.
mhm,
I get what you're saying. Definitely. And also what you're saying is about kind of conscious self-leadership, or you want to call it
mhm,
conscious
even perfection.
awakening, right?
Yeah.
Because if
With
you're in that
perfection.
state of awakening, you you are just not, you don't have parts literally working for you, like you're saying. And what you're saying is for us to be integrated in this world as divine beings of love, which we all are by default, we need to have trained, conscious, beautiful protector parts that know how to sense who is unsafe, which
Right.
space is not safe, when to do the shield situation. And that
Mhm.
will kind of in a safe way preserve our self energy from I know it's not getting damaged by the trauma and by the abuse, but still there is collateral reactions, right? Our part, like our
Right.
system gets affected.
Right. So so even if we do these preparations, what you're saying is we can still get hurt, of course. And our burdens often come from no one's saying to us as children that what they said about you wasn't true. You know, how they treated you was wrong. Like when I do repairs with my kids, when they were, you know, when I learned about IFS, I'd say, you know what, I realized I treated you in a way that made you, I can sense it made you feel this way. And I want you to know that that's not true, you know, or that that was my fault. That because I yelled at you was my fault. That was me because I lost control. And if I don't do a repair, that little kids will say like, well, dad yelled at me, that means I'm bad. And without the repair, that starts to turn into a burden. So on the same theory, what if when we leave a bad situation, we could we either with help from a therapist or practitioner or alone to remind our parts how this person treated us is not because they're bad. It's not because they did something wrong, that this person was hurting or this person was going through that thing. So in some ways, I'm wondering if there's a way to also, and I don't know if there's a way, again, we're human, so we're going to get hurt. So we might not be able to mitigate it, but I think we could lessen it. And one thing I want to say too is that I don't think there's ever a time when we're just self with no parts, like our parts don't go away. I think it's kind of like the conductor analogy, right? The conductor is self and the parts are the players. Have you ever heard that analogy? Like it's in Dick Schwartz wrote in his first book, The Introduction to IFS, or maybe that wasn't his first book, but that was a early book. So he used this analogy that there's a conductor and then our parts are the players. And at first, he didn't say this, but maybe he did, but I like to take it further. Like it's probably like when you first meet your parts, it's like a cacophony of sound. Like everybody's
Yes.
out of tune
Yeah,
and they're
totally.
playing different things. And there's ones running around smashing their violin on things, you know. So we have to like work with each part one by one until they feel competent with their instrument. And then when they play together, there's harmony in the system. And we're kind of like bringing out the self energy of our parts by taking care of them, by attuning to them. And when our parts are unburdened, it's not just me having to do all this interfacing with people. They are also in self interfacing. Like who's teaching right now? If myself and yourself is the same, why am I different than somebody else? It's because my parts are also here. And I like to, instead of like self leadership, because I studied leadership as my PhD. You know, true leadership is you're out front and there's followers. And I like to shift that to I'm in a circle with my parts and they're letting me be part of the circle, but they're looking towards me to lead.
Yeah, that is more
And
doable. That is more realistic and more doable, definitely.
and with these parts, when we're all working together, we can do some cool stuff. We can treat people well. We can protect ourselves because this part used to scan, right? I have this one part, it's like a gold helmet with a lens that scans people. It's like, are you safe? Are you safe? Are you safe? Will you love me? Will you love me? And it's protecting an infant. So this is nonverbal. This one's nonverbal. And it had a green light and a red light, and I can ask it questions, and yes or no. The green would shine for yes and red for no. But once I've unburdened this infant and worked with it, now I get a sense, like I'm even sensing this. It's more of like a cool hat that could just help me see like who's safe. You know, so it still can scan. Like if you're going to go down an alleyway and you see people that look dangerous, don't you want to know? Right? So it's good for our parts to say, you might want to turn around and walk back because that whatever's happening there doesn't feel safe.
Yeah. Um, you know, what I'm hearing is self leadership is a bit more nuanced and a little bit more complex than this idealized picture of I'm just being love and light, perfect, kind, loving self every single day, and and that's self leadership. what you're describing sounds a bit more realistic and doable. Having said that, I'm curious, there are people that just go on with their life. There are people that at certain point of their life start doing their inner work. There are people
Mhm.
at certain point in their life start doing the inner search, soul search, spiritual journey, therapy, whichever that takes people on this inner path. Like you're saying in the beginning, when you go inside, it's like an orchestra that is out of sync. It's a nonsense. It's a cacophony, right? So those of us who have took whichever step towards U-turn, towards turning there and starting their process, at some point there will be curious about that. What is ego states,
Mhm.
parts, what is self, who is myself, who is me. And in the process, of course, there will be this funny moment of self-like parts where I think I am self, but it's still a part. But I will
Right.
ask you that question just a little bit later. But how do you just see this whole process of, for majority of people, not necessarily made the step of a U-turn, not necessarily sat, closed their eyes and, went inside. How do you see that self energy, self presence running through us humans when we do the U-turn
Okay.
or
Yeah.
when we don't do it?
So I want to make sure I understand your question. Are you thinking like, say someone never found IFS, never heard about this, but because they're human, they have self-energy. Like, how does that work in their system?
I would just say those who have never made a U-turn in any of the therapist modalities or ways,
Mm-hmm.
they not necessarily even have an idea or of there is that self. They think that
Right.
this is self. This is all
Right.
me. All this feelings, emotions,
Yeah.
thoughts is just one big me,
Yeah.
right? And I guess my question is how people that never made that step can make that step towards their self. Because
Mm.
if we talk about self leadership, there must be a step one somewhere.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Um, well, you got me really interested in like what happens to people that aren't even intending to do this work. But so I'll just say one quick thing is, there's lots of writing around being in a flow state. So if you're playing sports or you're cooking or you're doing something you love and you become lost in your work and you're just almost like time goes away, you just feel at ease. I think people are, excuse me, are tapping into self-energy there or being loving with their children where their heart is just wide open. And so I think self is expressing itself during those times. It might be during spirituality practices. But if somebody now wants to be intentional and do a U-turn, you know, I guess the first thing that's most important is we call it a self-to-part relationship. So how would I make a relationship with any part, right? Um, so the first thing we might want to do is just, and are these people with a practitioner or are they just kind of on their own? This on their own is what you're thinking?
I guess yes. I guess for now
Okay.
on their own.
Okay, so if I was on my own, first I would start noticing like where in my life do I feel stuck? Where in my life do I wish I could respond differently? There's times when we do things with our kids or with our partners or with our friends or at work, and 5 minutes later, we're like, why? Why did I do that? So for me, IFS really is not just about feeling better in ourself, it's about being better in relationship to others. That's a big part of my book, right? So when I think to myself, I wish I wouldn't be so defensive when people give me feedback. Like people tell me, hey, Seth, yesterday at the meeting, this happened, and we're really hoping that you could blank, blank, blank. And I yell at them, like, wow, could you? ever say such a thing about me? And then later I'm like, why did I yell at them? I mean, I could have just like at least got been quiet. Like, why did I do this? So to go back and just even think back to that moment and feel like usually there's a feeling, not for everybody. So if you don't feel this, it's okay. But one first step is how does it feel in the body? Like if I'm imagining somebody telling me something and I'm having a reaction in my body, if I start to get that angry feeling, what happens in my body? And I start there and I try to be curious. And one thing I'll say is when we're trying to be with our system and get to know a part by doing a U-turn, like looking back into myself, if we do it from our head, it's usually never going to work.
Like
Because I really
everything.
think, yeah, because I think our heart energy is where self energy kind of resides. Because this is like your heart chakra is like love, right? So what I like to do first is a meditation for myself. I do this almost every time I need to really check in, is I notice, where's my attention? Is it above my shoulders? And if I'm sensing my body, I'm sensing you from here, it's probably not going to feel as rich to you or as open as if I could almost let my attention drift, 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 drift. Like I'm getting like tingles now that my attention is here.
Mm.
And I'm noticing I was talking quicker before. I was probably more in my head a minute ago. And now I'm sensing you and sensing my system from my heart place. And from that place, if you can do that, I want to feel that anger. Like where is that in my body? Ooh, like I just felt my stomach tighten up. So even to ask the tightness, is there anything you want me to know? So I'm not even noticing a particular part, which is like almost like a separate being in our system. I'm just gonna say to the tightness, what's happening? Like, or maybe I'll just even notice it. Some people takes a lot of time just noticing the feeling, like is it hot, is it cold, is it big, is it small? So you can do all that, but I like to just kind of like, is there a message there? And you might even hear some nasty words like, you know, blank, blank, blank those people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm hearing that. And I like to mirror. So say back what you hear. That's all you have to do. And do it over and over. Oh, I hear that you want to say these bad words to these people. Can you, and then just see if your heart could be curious. Like you might feel other parts that want to push that away. Like that's bad. Don't do that. And if you feel anything but love, go back to your heart and say, just ask questions. Like, why do you want to say those things to people? And to hold the assumption in your heart that all of our parts are trying to help. And if that's like a prerequisite, like we just know that, that never changes. It's easier for our heart to be open. And when we mirror back and say, I hear this and I hear that, oh, and because these parts are really us, like when I hear what my parts say, I tend to understand it at a very deeper level than you would because I'm talking about my system. That's why IFS is one benefit of IFS is like when we help you be your own healer, you could be more empathetic and loving and compassionate to your parts than anyone else because you could say, yeah, I remember that. I know exactly what you're talking about. Um, there's an Imago therapist who said this, and I can't remember her name. I'm sorry, but I heard this through Imago that being heard and understood is so close to the feeling of being loved that it's almost indistinguishable. So when you just say to your part, I see you're angry because that person was hurting us. That person was making us feel small. So you had to come out and get angry. Am I getting that right? And the part feels seen, its truth is heard. So usually angry parts will soften when they feel heard because if you don't hear me, I have to get louder and louder and louder. So with any part, any U-turn, it's like, can I just be like, I want to know you, understand you, better words.
Right. It's like
Um,
relationship with yourself, right? When we say I need to improve relationship with myself, I need to love myself more. But usually what comes first is like going shopping, doing doing this kind of nice things, right? Taking yourself on a vacation. But the relation, what you're describing is this relating between the self
mhm,
and other aspects of your inner being. And I think a lot of us doing that already intuitively, even without knowing IFS model or even kind of having the idea of parts, we kind of intuitively can just like, oh, I feel you. I'm with you. You're safe. You're
mhm,
okay. Right? Do this to ourselves sometimes. But
right.
there are also, this is the hard piece, and you don't need to give a lot of um, intro into this, but as you speak, the person that comes in front of my face is someone who thinks this is me. And there is no relationship. There's just one thing, like a citadel model of mine, you know?
Mm,
There's just me. What do you mean parts? What do you mean my what? It's just I am. What would you say about
mm.
that?
Um, I guess when I find people like that, what I'm feeling right now, I guess, is that that person must need a lot of protection.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Like there must be a reason that I have to stay up here. Because a lot of times the body isn't safe for people if they've been hurt in particular ways. So they have to stay up here. Um, and if a protector part took over pretty young because self was in danger somehow, like your essence, like people were hurting each other, people were screaming, it was loud, or you didn't have resources, like, and some part of you just clicked in and said, I'm going to make us survive. That part might think I am the only thing here that's ever going to help. And that usually becomes these self-like parts that think I'm me.
Right, right, right. When I first met my self-like part, it was maybe the most frustrating moment in my life when I was like, this is me, this is me, this is me. And my guy was like, mm, I doubt that. Like, what do you mean? This is me. And then coming to terms, I don't know, I think it's for that part, coming to terms with the fact that it was not self was like like yeah, like an ego death type of experience.
Like an identity crisis too.
Completely. Yeah.
Yeah. I had one client who said, I want to hire you for 9 sessions. I'm like, okay. And he goes, I leave, and I like, I don't want to give too many details, but um, around the seventh session or so, this person started like taking a young part who had struggled in school, like himself was young, and this part wanted to like he wanted to help this child, but the way he was helping, I could tell it wasn't self because it was like I get him up every morning, we brush our teeth, I get him to school, and I'm like, does he still want to be at that school? Well, he needs to do it because he needs to succeed so he feels better. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like self. Self would say to the child, what do you want? Do you want to stay at the school? Because I've already been there. I live in 2025 now. I don't have to have my parts still in school. Like, if you're ready to be integrated with my body here, let's do it. Like, what do you want? Oh, you want to succeed there? Okay, I'll support you there. But you get to lead this dance, right? And so we are getting to our like eighth or ninth, and I was like, okay, I can't let this person leave without me somehow sharing that because they knew what IFS was. Like, I don't think you're there yet when if you think you're in self. But I said, so I think this could be a self-like part. And he's like, no, it's me. And I said, would it be okay if I do some direct access where I talk to this part directly? And so direct access is like I'm talking to the part. And I just said, hi. It's like, I said, so I asked a bunch of questions and I'm like, so are you a part? And the guy looked at me really stern. I was like, yes. I'm just like, okay, will you be willing to pull back just for like 10 seconds to see who's here? Like, I want to introduce you to this person's self. And the client reported like he saw like a hologram of himself pull off and look back at him.
Whoa.
And in that moment, he felt like the openness of like, whoa. And then it just snapped back. So it's kind of like that. Like, and but I had other people with self-like parts that it's very similar. Like this, it's so me that it's, but it's that moment of kind of introducing people to their self.
And this is the moment of, I think this is like this precise line where this whole IFS therapy and this whole journey of awakening really intersect, right? Because that moment, like, it's a part, and you
Hmm.
have like a first sense of something huge, like a huge identity splitting from you, which forever was you, and now it's a part. That is that crack
Hmm.
of, yeah,
Awakening.
breakthrough, like mind blowing moment.
Hmm. Yeah. And I thought I heard you say that it's kind of like a blend of, so some people do it as therapists. I do it as a practitioner, you know, and it dips into like a spiritual healing model that way, that it is like an awakening of who we are to our essence. Um, I personally think IFS, which was kind of given to Dick Schwartz, um, was a way for maybe divine or maybe guides to say the Western people need a tool to help them tap into what people around the world have been doing, like indigenous cultures, for thousands of years, which is basically time traveling in their own system, removing burdens with shamans, with power animals, with healers, with medicine people, with people all over the world in different forms. And I think the Western mind was getting so closed off to the nature of true healing, which I consider true healing, that IFS became a doorway or a gateway for us to tap into what's in the center of the circle. Is like all these the traditions go to the same place. And I do think IFS, we don't give enough credit. It's not, I don't think IFS was taken. Some people think, oh, that sounds like shamanism. You ripped off, you're culturally appropriating, you're doing all these things. I don't think that's how it happened. I think these things were given to Dick and to Michi Rose and to all these other people as a way for us to be healers. And it just so happens that we're tapping into what's been happening forever. And we should say that. We should say what we're tapping into is a universal healing that cultures around the world have been doing. And they might even have other ways or quicker ways. And I'll say that with my clients that have done this so long, that it's like the beginning level of IFS is following all the steps and following all the protocols. When you have enough unburdening that your system, like the cave, has opened up, and now you can freely walk out into the light. Once you get to that space, we don't really need the protocols all that much. People will, like, I just follow your system. At that point, I'm like, you're leading because you have enough access. And it might be like things that happen with me, I'll say something and I'll be like, that was my mother's voice. And I'll go outside and I'll say, I want this to leave me. I don't go through all the protocols. I just take that energy. Once I see it, it's like, you can't hide anymore. and I release the energy. That's IFS. But I don't need to do the protocol anymore.
Thank you for saying, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I think you're validating a lot of experiences that we have, and maybe there we have sometimes parts that don't want to admit it for what it is. That the journey um, is at some point just stops being linear, rational, by the book. It just stops at some point, and you have to walk with what's presenting itself in the moment.
Hmm.
And that's there is not in the manual. Just need to trust.
Yeah. I mean, I worked with somebody today who had a religious trauma and didn't even would say like the J word. That's what he would refer to Jesus as, a J word. By the end of the session, I just had this, like, I felt like I was getting a download, like the true, like, divine essence of this Christ would like to bring itself to this person's part if they're willing. And I said, I'm just asking because it feel like they were very open at that point. Would, since this part did a bunch of unburdening, it already did a ton of unburdening when they know that I'm not a horrible sinner just by being born, and I'm not, you know, because I have this and this in my life, everybody said I'm horrible. People have been telling me my whole life that I'm just not this person. So we unburdened all that. And I said, would you like, I sense a presence. Would you like to just get confirmation that you are not those things? Kind of like, would you like to, I sense the true Jesus here. Would you like to interface? And I didn't know how that was going to happen. I've done that before where they see like a human figure who loves them and holds them. And, other people use Mary Magdalene, other entities. But this person was like, it wasn't a person, it was a light that came. And he's like, the client was like crying out of pure joy that the light's in me, it's in you, it's in everything. Like in that moment, like this force showed the true nature of what this is. And it was probably one of the most beautiful sessions I've ever had. I know this happened today, but so like you said, that I don't know, I didn't plan that. It's not like, oh, religious trauma, bring Jesus, or bring Moses or bring somebody. It's
Yeah,
not like that. It's just like all of a sudden I knew that was the moment. Like it came to me as a choice. So I didn't say do it. I was like, here's an option. And
exactly.
then their system took it in a way that I didn't even expect.
It was the right moment, right guidance, the right set of everything, enough trust in the room, and miracles happen. And that's gives hope, honestly, right? Because
Mhm.
sometimes people do like a classic talk therapy for years and years and years, and at some point they feel like this miracle will never happen, or they're this the hope starts starts leaking out,
Mhm.
and in this experiences, it might be the most healing therapeutic moment of this entire process that can happen just in one session when it's the right set of circumstances.
Mhm. I think I find myself when I'm in my own therapy and I'm talking a lot, that I tend to be talking from my manager parts, or parts that are like, I don't really want to go inside today because it's scary. Like I don't know if I can handle it today.
Right, right.
I think sometimes being witnessed is helpful, like as I'm talking, but these deep experiences, I feel like these are like almost like psychedelic journeys we take people on without using the medicine.
I always say that. It's an absolutely psychedelic experience without being on any medicine. And but of course everyone have to be ready for it and have to have
Right.
a lot of safety safety and trust is that what really makes it
Right.
safe for this journey to happen.
Right.
I have no idea how the time passed. I honestly thought we were talking for 20 minutes. I'm shocked to see at the clock. I don't know what happened. I
We
don't
were in
know.
a
It
time
was
and space.
so strange.
Can I say one more thing that's hitting me
I
before we go?
want, of course.
Um, so if somebody's listening to this, because I know you cater to a spiritual crowd from what you said, but there might be somebody here who's like, that just sounds way too spiritual for me, or too, or that's not, I'm not at that place. I just want them to know, like, that experience of letting even one part of you feel deeply seen and understood is all the healing that needs to happen. Because when a part of you feels, even the part of you who has to be at work on time or else, you ask that part, what would happen if we don't? Well, I'm going to get fired. I'm going to lose my life. My whole life is going to collapse. Even if you said, I'm really hearing that you feel like the world will collapse if we're late. Do I have that right? No judgment. I'm not trying to talk you out of it. I'm not trying to do anything but offer pure love. Like, oh, that must be so hard for you to carry this load. And what if I could be here with you and you don't have to carry it alone? In that moment, there's ripples of love healing through your whole system. So even in the far reaches of your system, that parts that you have no idea who live there, they're all like, what is that? So you're igniting hope in your system just by touching one protector. And everyone else is like, Now, at times when we start doing this work, they might rush, be like, we need healing. But we can say, we can hang out as a group one at a, and we can deal this one at a time. But just to have that relationship, and I'll say this last thing, that you know what you needed from an adult in your life when you were young. Like you wish your mother, your father, or your both your fathers, or both your mothers, whoever, whatever your situation was, that somebody would have said or sat down with you at that moment. Like that time you came home upset when somebody really hurt you, but they did something else that made it so you could never talk about what happened. What if they would have sat with you and said, I promise you there will be no judgment. You can tell me everything and I'll just listen and hold you. And if you want me to say something, ask me and I'll say whatever. I'll give you any advice you want. Or if you want me to stay quiet, I will. And what if when you're done telling me, I look at you with loving eyes and just say, I love you. And I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm not going to talk about your bad choices. I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't have done. Like, I'm not shaming you for somebody else hurting you. Later, we can talk about strategies for that not happening again. But right now, you need to be witnessed. And what if you could do that for your part? So you pick any age that you needed that and go inside and be that person. That is the spiritual healing that you need. All this other stuff is just like cool stuff. But that alone is love. That alone is the divine light.
Yeah. I'm taking away from this what's supposed to have been
Yes.
episode on self-leadership. It became for me, and I can imagine for others, an episode on love, and that love is always inside of us, and why we got out of love is because we didn't get the love that we needed, and how we can back on it is to receive that love from maybe our people who support us or ourselves. And that's the path, and that's the path to healing. That's the path to self-leadership. Love is the way. That's all I can say. I'm I'm in awe. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
That's really cool.
I have really a lot of questions that I was wanting to ask, but this whole episode just was flooded with that love, without anyone's agenda or whichever idea
Yeah,
of what it
well,
should.
let's do it again and we'll have part 2. And then we
Please.
can ask all those questions. I would love it. This is fun. For me, this is great because like it's kind of like doing a session with somebody. Like you fall into self energy. So it helps my whole system to be in this kind of space. So
Thank
thank you.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Your Soul's Therapist podcast. I want you to know that I deeply appreciate your willingness to find healing for your soul and add to our collective sanity. If you feel like this podcast offered you something valuable, I invite you to circulate a goodwill back by rating the show and clicking the button follow. If you will share this episode with your friends and family, I will be beyond grateful. My investment of time and energy to create this authentic content is significant, and your input and support can make a huge, huge difference. And before you go, I want to remind you that each of our journeys are unique and truly complex. And my commitment is to look at your soul with clarity, to help you see what you might be blind to see, and gently guide you out of the places where you have been stuck. Whether you're drawn to my intuitive healing sessions or profound depth of counseling, I'm here, ready to accompany you on your path. Go to my website, vladadesousa.com, and choose the best way to work with me one-on-one. May you be blessed.